Welcome to ABA Inside Track's preview of our winter 2026 book club on atomic habits. For those of you who are new to our book clubs, we do these every single season. And except for our September supervision book, these are all specifically made and voted upon by our patrons at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. Anyone at the $10 and up level, you're able to join at any level, but at that $10 and up level, you're able to get access to these book clubs, the full 2-ish hour version of the episode right away. We do eventually put these out in the free feed about a year out. But the other benefit, in addition to getting the material right away and getting to vote on the books, we do that in June, is the 2 CEs you will get for listening to this are absolutely no additional charge. It's just the subscription, as well as for our listener choice episodes, as well as getting everything a week ahead of time. So you're ahead of the game. It's what we like to do. It's a big thank you. So again, if you want to hear the rest of the episode we're doing, head on over to patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. But in the meantime, we hope you enjoy our discussion of our general thoughts and the first couple introductory chapters of the book Atomic Habits. Please enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but it's safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always, actually, wait a minute. It's not the same people as always, because this is one of our special seasonal book club episodes as voted on by our patrons at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. Every season, we take our little behavior analytic research discussion podcast and turn it into a little book discussion podcast. And this is our winter 2025 book club. Or is it spring? I can't keep track. I think it's winter.
It's winter.
It's winter time. So I already said my name, but who else is joining me for this little book soiree?
I'm here. Jackie's here.
Hello, and it's me, Diana Perry Cruz.
And saving best for last, as always, Alan Haberman, book club guy.
Oh boy! All right. So
hey, Alan. Good to see you.
Good to see Alan. We're hopping right into this recording with people jumping out of cars and getting home driving because we've only got a limited amount of time and it's the holiday season. So
like an action movie around here.
It's only so much.
Jackie is hanging onto the side of a semi truck as she is recording.
I absolutely am. So just be warned. Be warned, everyone.
Jackie's got one of those Flintstone cars where you got to put your feet on the ground and like move it along. Oh, yabba dabba do. Let's get started. This winter book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a book that I think, Jackie, you had recommended this for the list, correct?
It was my book. I love this book. I read it before the book club. And I was like, we should read this book.
And people agreed and voted to read this book as well. So folks, if you're getting this on our free feed, we hope you enjoy this first kind of discussion generally about the book. And then for folks who are joined at the $10 and up level on Patreon, we'll be able to get the full recording right now. You're going to just keep listening. Don't stop. We'll eventually release this on the free feed. It's about a year out. But Jackie says don't delay. And I don't know, do the rest of us say don't delay on Atomic Habits? Let's start by doing some general thoughts about the book.
I say don't delay. This is a quick book. It's an easy read. It is, what are those kind of books called? Motivational. Mm-hmm. You're like, I could do this. I could do better with my life, and I'm going to be a better person moving forward. Great to start the year off. I don't know when this is being released, but sometime in the beginning of 2026. So great if you're thinking about like, how do you want to get your life on gear for 2026. This is a great book. I found it to be inspirational, and don't sleep on it. Okay. Call now.
It's not thick enough to be a good pillow, so I would also not sleep on it. Alan, how about you?
I think that, one, it's well written, and its definitions of what habits are, and in terms of like behavior analytic sort of terminology in layman's terms mixed together make a lot of sense, even if the author isn't necessarily trained in behavior analysis, but consistent. My sort of issue or response was it's not the most friendly to people that are maybe like ADHD, who like, I found a lot of this, like I've read this so many times and heard these things so many times, and it has not been it's not an effective place to start. I'll put it that way. with trying to like address habits. If you have issues with like focus, attention, reward sensitivity, it's just not necessarily where I would start.
And
But
he's
if you
definitely speaking. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you had like, like if you're in a place where it seems like habits would fix things, it's like, well, maybe some like coaching, counseling to help you understand where the struggles are and maybe do some values work so that you're maybe more sensitive to reward systems and, that might be helpful. But I got really frustrated with some of what's in this book because I'd heard it so many times and had found it not helpful earlier in life.
Oh. Maybe I've just never read a self-help book before. I don't know. So for me, it's coming at me for the first time.
I have read a self-help before, and I do not have ADHD, and I use the book to transform my entire morning. And so now I have this beautiful, I've stacked habits in the morning, and so now I have this beautiful morning routine that really sets me up for the day. And I have the book to thank. And I love self-help books, but I also read, a self-help book every single morning. So
You do.
I am the self-help book guru of the group.
I do think that he speaks a lot from his personal experience. So like what has worked for him, and the examples that he picks are clearly the ones that like, gel for him, because he references like fitness and exercise a lot. And that is a big area of his interest. So like that, I'm like, what if we branched out a little bit in terms of examples?
I'm going to say,
hear what you're saying, Al.
My largest negative of the book is it felt like at every example, he was working so hard. Like you could almost like see the tension and the sweat on his brow when he's like, what's an example? That's not how I increased my reps at the gym. I just can't think of it. And he does think of them. He definitely has other examples, but there is this return. And again, I would say if I didn't know kind of his story, because he sprinkles his story in, I'd say maybe he just was like, well, I think my audience is people who want to, work on their health or work on their exercise routines. But it definitely was, from his life. He's like, I use this for my writing and I use this for my exercising. And I guess considering he looks like he's in good shape on his like webpage and he wrote a million-seller book, I guess, he's not just a atomic habit writer, but he's also a client, as they said. So that was kind of, if you're like, I hate exercise or I don't want to talk about exercise, you will have moments in the book that maybe don't resonate with you.
Yeah, it's not the whole book. It's just like he does kind of pull from that well several times.
There's a little bit of a dude bro voice in the book. Though I did find it well written and organized. And
I agree with you, Rob. Yeah, it is a little bro-y how he wrote it. I also, when I first picked up the book, I did pick it up because it is a bestseller, but also because I had been reviewing the atomic repertoire when I was talking about observational learning, and the atomic repertoire and behavior analysis is like fine-grained units of behavior that come together to make more complex operants. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if that will align. And so that is why I actually picked the book up.
To see if they matched.
Yeah. Well, and just so that I don't come off sounding like, a wet hen about it, it is good. It is logical. As someone who has done my work to be less, driven by my inattention qualities, I could see some of this being like very helpful. Also, that work has come as I've become a behavior analyst. So it's like, oh yeah, I understand cue, reward, all of that. That all makes sense. So it is, it's well done. So I can see why people find it helpful. Just a big caveat to that: the audience that might crave it might get frustrated with some of it.
Yeah. One thing I want to throw out to the group and see what you think. As much as this is meant to be, everyone can read this semi-pop psychology book, and maybe not exactly pop psychology in the sense that it is very well researched, there is something about how Clear has taken so much. Clearly, he has read some Skinner. I don't know which Skinner, but he's read some of it, and he's read a lot of other habit books. He does seem like he has taken like all the good ideas, put them in the book, and to some extent, I kind of feel like if someone came to me at like a party or something and said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I explained my job and they said, "I don't understand human behavior at all. I don't understand values, psychological flexibility. No clue at all. And if you talk about ABC, I'm going to get bored or throw a drink in your face." I might say, you know what? This is not a bad book to read if you kind of want to understand just the very basics of things like, basic behavior change and some of the basics of ACT, though he never specifically labels that. But the idea of value, working towards values and adding values is sort of a motivating operation. So in some ways, I feel like his book has explained a lot of what we do in ways that are probably more easily digestible by the vast public than some of what we've all been able to do. Maybe not us, but, others, not us. We're great at it.
I mean, I could see that point. I think that a lot of what he does or what he talks about, there's obviously, or it seems to me that exposure to like coaching, which is like a big part, like health and wellness coaching or business coaching, probably two forms of coaching he seems very familiar with. A lot of that, like research and writing, does come from people who have experience in our field or were influenced by people in our field, and we still contribute to those fields. So I think that's probably why some of it is so familiar in that. I don't know how much he's read Skinner so much as he has read people who have read Skinner.
Yeah. And he references Skinner right there in the beginning. Yeah.
Yep. So, but I can't see him necessarily diving into, science of human behavior and being like, I'm going to write Atomic Habits. It's not necessarily that related to the link.
He might make it a habit. I'm going to read research-based articles more often than the books that then cite those that I then cite as, my citation chain of my writing. I don't know. I was very shocked reading this because I was worried. Every time we do book club, we try to find books that sort of, go through that narrow path of everyone would be interested in hearing about the books or reading the book, but they have to be behavior analytic. And this was one without knowing anything about it. I was very worried we were going to read the book and be like, oh crap, we just read a whole book and there's no way we can record on this thing because it is just so much like believe in your dreams and, start small and just like nonsense.
Manifest.
And in some ways, this is one of the most behavior analytic books we've done, barring books that specifically have behavior analysis in the title. It's more behavioral analytic than a lot of the supervision books.
I trusted Jackie to recommend a good book for an ABA podcast. I'll put it that way, Rob. So
no, I
did not have
Jackie
that fear.
Would misdirect us. But like I put books on that list that there's a part of me that's like, I skimmed this book. I'm pretty sure it's going to make it, but I have a fear as I'm reading it. Like, is this enough? Is this enough?
That sounds like a Rob problem.
Oh, okay. Nurture Effect. I was a little nervous about Nurture Effect, but that one was really good. That was a behavior analytic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed this book. End of podcast.
Yeah, that's it. It's great. You should read it. Go for it. You might not use everything in there, but you may. So.
Okay. No. I don't want to say anything further. Actually, you take over.
We got like over an hour and a half to go.
I feel satisfied with my podcast.
Not over an hour and a half. We have 1 hour and 28 minutes.
Oh, okay. So just brief author bio. James Clear is not unlike some of our books where, he was an Oxford fellow and wrote this book in the 30s. No, he seems like he's just a dude who loved learning about habits. And he went to college with a baseball scholarship and then was injured and couldn't do sports. And he seems like he had a period of his life where he didn't quite know what he was going to do with himself. And he just sort of, kept looking at habits as part of his exercise routine and in different forms of behavior, and then decided he wanted to start writing and sharing some of the things he's learned. So he used these methods, which again, he did not invent any of these. He has just packaged them very efficiently. And then he started writing, and as a habit was writing and started writing on a website in 2012 and sort of using these habits was able to build up a following and then sort of put it all together and said, you know what, I think I can write a book because I have enough people who like what I have to say. And he started consulting and then made the book. And that's it. He focused a lot on habits about injuries, recovering from his own injuries, sports injuries, his sports performance, and then really felt like, there was so much to pull from biology, neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, and they kind of, smooshed it all together a lot of what's in this book, if you've ever read Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit, I have not read that book, but he does pull a lot of ideas from that book. I think the thing he seems to add is really maybe values-based practice in your habits. That did seem to come more from what he learned from psychology and behavior analysis than he did from that book specifically.
I've seen Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit.
Oh, but there
Did they reference that? Or?
No, I don't. I mean, he might have watched it in preparing for the book, but I can't guarantee that anything was learned from that movie. I don't think we learned anything from that movie. Other than we don't need Sister Act 3. 1 was great enough. And then also, he looked a lot into reinforcement practices. So a lot of this book really comes at the idea of building habits from one of improving your environment, looking at how do you make meaningful reinforcement systems and how do you tie your habits into values, which is not something I ever thought about when it came to habits. I thought about it in terms of changing, other behaviors or other psychological and flexible patterns or experiential avoidance, but never in terms of like Jackie was saying, like, how am I going to get up in the morning? Or like, what's my morning routine going to be? So I thought that was actually a really, really good addition to the habit literature. Maybe not, I haven't read everything ever on habits, but as far as we've seen. And he definitely, like Dinah, you said, he shouts out Skinner a whole bunch and believes, when he comes it all together, he smooshes it all into a habit making sandwich. And his quote, "I believe it is one of the first models of human behavior to accurately account for both the influence of external stimuli and internal emotions on our habits." Now, I don't think James Clear invented anything in this book necessarily, so perhaps not. But I think it does look at habits in a way that we don't always think about. Maybe some of us do based on our practice. But in terms of looking at the ABCs and also adding in, motivation in ways that I don't know if we always plan for at that molecular atomic level. So that's a brief James Clear summary.
Yeah. I liked that he basically got started doing this because he started a blog. Mm. Back in those blog days, he was at the right place at the right time, and kind of like Julie and Julia, like the lady who wrote she did all of Julia Child's cookbooks and then wrote a blog about each of the recipes. She got really famous doing that, and he got really famous doing this. And we were at the right place, the right time doing podcasting in kind of a similar way.
So James Clear is like the guy who wrote that Shit My Dad Says Twitter account and then got a TV deal out of it.
Yeah.
Remember that period, everyone, where you just had to be on the internet and you got a TV or book deal? Those were the days, huh?
He has sustained interest, throughout this entire time in what he has to say. So he has good stuff to say. I'm not saying that it was not appropriate for him to get that type of audience.
No, I did subscribe to his newsletter. And we weren't able to add it into this discussion, but he did just release a follow-up to this book, The Atomic Habits Workbook.
Nuclear Habits.
Which I was planning on, I was going to try to buy and skim through it or see a copy of, but there wasn't enough time for it to ship before we were recording, because it literally was just announced in his newsletter this week, which might have been Wednesday or Thursday. So didn't think it was going to make it in time. But again, if you read this book and you love it, then there's a workbook if you want to sort of do some of the exercises in it with some more guidance. And his website has a lot of the things like his habit tracker that he talks about. It does have a lot of visuals. So if you're not sure how you would put this together, or you want to make even less friction in your personal behavior change project, he's got all sorts of visuals that you can use and grids and sheets you can use. I actually found a lot of the visuals he used in this book to be very descriptive as to what he was talking about, which I find a lot of books just tend to have pictures and they're like, look, it's a picture, or it's extraneous to what you're reading in the text. And I found pretty much everything kind of went together. He definitely edited this book down to just what you needed. All right. Any other big thoughts on the book before we move into the let's talk about what's in the book, the content discussion piece?
I would challenge trainees and student analysts who read this book to go through and really be a great place to practice what behavior analytic terminology, what's the because in a couple of places he combines things in really interesting ways in terms of antecedents, and he's is he talking about learning history here? Is he talking about an MO here?
Yeah.
Because I think that would really help future behavior analysts understand like why this is effective, and then how to like either for themselves or for maybe clients that need this kind of intervention, make reading this useful professionally.
Mhm.
Even experienced behavior analysts should probably do that. Doesn't hurt to get practice with the terminology, I would say.
Yeah, there were many times reading this that I was like, oh, I really want to give this to my trainees. Some of it for those reasons, just in terms of let's think about the application of behavioral principles to your own life. And then on top of that, I think that there are some good components of advice here on how they can manage this really difficult and stressful time in their lives where they're trying to balance school, work, hours accrual, studying, like all of the components there. It is really a lot. So I think there are some good pieces in here.
I also
for trainees.
I also appreciated kind of to the point we're discussing now, really the sense of so much of this book you'd expect. You pick up a book called Atomic Habits, you expect it's going to blow some smoke and be like, if you want to dream it, you're going to do it. And I don't think I've read a self-help-ish book that was very focused on like, you need to set up your environment. It doesn't matter how much you're like, I want it or I believe in it. If you don't actually physically change what's in your space to make it more likely you engage in the new behavior, and then think about what is the reward you're going to set for making a simple response effort, and then just get into the habit of practicing some of these small steps and then build it. You'll never improve your behavior, which is kind of brave because you think about how many books are, they're going to make money off of. If you do this, it will change your life. And this is one of the first books I think I read. They're like, if you do this, every day will be just the tiniest, maybe a little bit better. And by the time you're dead, you'll say, you know what? I improved a lot across my lifespan.
I would just say that I think probably the market is saturated on that first type of book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although I hadn't read any of them apparently, but
they seem to keep selling. If people keep writing them, I'm wondering if they're.
Well, maybe if you would stop reading them, Rob, they wouldn't make enough money.
I don't read them, Alan. I'm too busy reading whatever we got next
Jackie.
to me. Yeah, Jackie's reading. Jackie had to jump off her phone to switch mics. So she can't hear right now.
She jumped off the semi truck.
Oh yeah. Do you want to say what book you got her for her birthday party? Didn't you get her a book for her birthday? It was a self-help book. Do you not remember?
For her birthday, I got her a book bag that said, "We'll break for little free libraries." I don't know what you're referencing.
You bought a book.
Oh, that's her Secret Santa present.
Oh, that was your Secret Santa present.
And it's called Let Them.
I've heard that book.
She's not online right now, so she doesn't know.
It won't be.
But actually, she does know because she said that when it arrived at her house, it didn't say from Santa like it was supposed to. It just said from Robert Perry. So she figured out that it was me.
I'm not really interested in that. I haven't read it, but it sounds a little not.
She can like those books. I haven't read it either.
If you like it, I like Atomic Habits. We'll see. I don't know if Let Them's making it in the book club list for next year.
No.
Let's just say. All right. Well, let's dig into the book a little bit, and we'll go a little bit longer on the preview because I think it does kind of get into some of that first chapter. You're going to know really quickly whether you agree with us that this does seem like a behavior analytic book, and there's going to be something of value in it for you, or that doesn't sound like a match for you. The first couple chapters really focus on the basics. So it's kind of the basic discussion of behavior change before he gets into the model, which you all know as an ABC
behavior analysis.
That's not what it's called here, though. And I actually like his terms. I don't want to say better than our field, but I like his terms. I want to use them if I'm describing behavior change going forward, because I think they will resonate more with your listener, with your audience. So one thing I do appreciate in this book is that every chapter starts with a fun little anecdote that describes a group that used some portion of this model or a model for change, because they all came before the book, so they couldn't have read this book and then use the model. So these are all behavior change processes that have occurred for various people. Like the first chapter is about the British cycling group that changed all their habits by using many of the principles in this book. They also used performance enhancing drugs, perhaps. So I guess that might be missing in your model. If you're not making the change, maybe you need like HGH or something is what that.
It made me think of the triplets of Belleville.
Oh, it totally did. Yes.
Yeah, but the point was that they looked at even tiny little incremental changes that they could make to their outfits that they were wearing or the way that they were exercising or like little bitty changes on their bike
Painting
or even
everything
like
white so they could find
or
dust.
like how the bikes were transported, and all of these tiny changes over time made the team so much better.
Yeah.
And then they, won it all. They
Yep.
were the prettiest princess.
And from that, the idea of it makes more sense to make tiny improvements for a long period of time, because it's really, really easy to make, non-improvement, because 1% better every day for a year sounds like, who cares? That's a lot of work for very little payoff. But at the end of that year, you're 37 times better than you were. I guess it depends on what you're quantifying, what your habit is going to be. Whereas it's easier to get worse at things, because if you get 1% worse, you get to zero pretty quickly. And really, sort of like it's the same with behavior change long term as it is for investment. It's not about, well, I got to put $1 million in or I'll never be a billionaire. It's about put 50 cents in every day and that will compound.
Compounds, exactly,
over
right.
time.
Because if you start at 10 and you add, let's start at 100.
Yeah.
If you start at 100 and you add 1%, now you're at 101. But then you're going to add 1% to 101. So you're not just adding 1, now you're adding 1.1.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? I don't know if I did the math exactly right on that. But yeah, so it's compounding over time.
Mm-hmm. I like his quote here. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Ooh. So again, as long as you are doing, and I think that's a message we don't necessarily pass along. I mean, I know for me, I've gotten so used to reading so much research where a lot of times you're looking at procedure to results, and you're looking at a graph where it's like demonstrate, turn on, turn off behavior, or something like changing criteria where it's like, look, we made the jumps. And sometimes it's really easy to forget the scale or the time frame that the folks are working under. Because you're like, I read that paper in 15 minutes. It didn't take 15 minutes for the behavior change that they're describing. It took weeks or months to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've read studies where the results go over an entire year. Like some of our studies were looking at like a school year, and they have to end the study because summer vacation, right? And sometimes forgetting that behavior change is rarely a all or nothing shift. I like that he has a good metaphor of progress as an ice cube, which I think I'm going to use the next time someone is like, yeah, you suggested this token economy and I used it for 5 minutes and the kid yelled at me and I hate your plan. I'm throwing it in the garbage. Of like, change is like an ice cube, I'll say. Every minute, it might be changing 1 degree. And it seems like nothing is happening. But suddenly at 32 degrees, you'll see it change rapidly and melt.
Do you have a pipe in that scenario when you're imagining yourself?
I should get one. I'm going to get a pipe, and I'm going to use that metaphor all the time because I am already so much fun to be around. Can I make, you know what? Let's see. That 1% increase. I had the pipe, I had the ice cube metaphor.
Yeah. But this is a good reminder for us in our field because there is so much of what we do that is incremental change, like you were saying, Rob. And I think many of us are drawn to this field because we find those small changes reinforcing in terms of, social significance. And that can be a challenge sometimes to maybe help parents kind of also identify and find those incremental changes reinforcing. But it's always going to be true that we are drawn to large, big, immediate changes just as a species, right? And that is really attractive to all of us. But the small changes will amount to bigger changes over time. And even for those of us who kind of, pedal in this area, it's a really good reminder both for our client behavior or self-behavior.
Mm. Alan, you're kind of our resident expert on the show.
Oh!
Yikes.
I'm 1%. By the end of this podcast, if I keep going with these bon mots, I'm going to be 37 times better.
Like Malmos, but okay.
It's part of the charm I've found.
It. Alan likes it. You can tell.
So the talk in this kind of introductory section, the idea of goals versus outcomes and sort of looking at your systems versus goals as well. This read as very ACT to me. I think I can't remember if it was something I just put in my notes or if I, pulled the word right from the book, but I think there's a mention of this idea of like fusing ideas with the talk of goals, and goals being these kind of either or states that many of us kind of live in. And then some people win and some people lose, and everyone's sort of like, well, I had good goals. Whereas in reality, the people who are, the winners in life had so many systems. Maybe they weren't even aware of some of those systems. Whereas, the quote unquote losers in life probably did not have as many systems. Or there were, like you mentioned, not everyone is going to read this book is going to be able to just throw together systems as quickly as, the book might describe that you could do if you follow this method. But what did you think? Were these did these feel very kind of like ACT adjacent?
I mean, yes, in that it feels very ACT adjacent, but also, especially this first chapter, felt very like foundational for like just behavior analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the thing about effective ACT practice, is that you need to understand stimuli, MOs, environmental arrangement, because otherwise you're just talking sort of frou-frou, woo-woo if you're not within if you're trying to apply ACT and talking about values. So talking about like incremental change, I think that there's, like, for instance, he talks about change being noticeable. And that's like when it's 1%, it's not noticeable. And I mean, I coach people all the time on using like an ACT-based framework about a lot of like salience of one's like automatic verbal behavior when you're like, if you're frustrated and you say something like, oh, I've got too much to do. Well, use that as a moment to be like, no, now's an opportunity for me to ask for help. If the first time, start the change right there. And also just changing your outlooks by, I mean, that's the big thing about like reframing as a practice, is that you can't magically fix all of your private verbal behavior that might be contributing to poor outcomes for you, or, you're not necessarily, in touch with your values, trying to find committed action. Well, small changes over time are what you have to do. You have to commit to making the small changes, or the big changes cannot come. So, in that sense, goals and outcomes. Goals are not outcomes. Goals are how we work toward our outcomes. So we have to have the right goal to get to the outcome, because we might have a goal that seems related to the outcome, but it might not be adequately like aligned. The goal may not, we could work toward that goal and not get the outcome. So I don't love the way he words part of that, which is winners and losers have the same goals. If you read that too shallowly, you might, misread that. It's that, within the idea of like the third place finisher and the first place finisher have the same goal. They just have a different learning history and a different reality that they're dealing with. So it makes me think of the women, the silver medalist women's swimmer who lost out to the world record breaker, who was like done with the relay before the others were even like turning back to finish the lap. And it's like, you know what? Second place is really first place for that person, because they were, if their goal was to like get a gold medal, they failed. But if their goal was to be a really great swimmer, well, they got the only person in the whole world that beat them at the Olympics was the person who set the world record. So they're a top swimmer. So just little changes like that do matter, both on your goals, your processes, and recognizing your successes.
Well,
or failures.
I think when we were talking about this too, as a behavior analyst, goals are merely SDs, right? Goals aren't behavior. So goals, the SD that sets up the behavior, which then produces the outcome. So I 100% agree with you there. I actually, this chapter made me a little mad.
Oh, really?
I'm assuming you're on the surprising power of atomic habits when they talk about the problems.
I'm just talking about the Rob had asked me about the actiness of this chapter. Okay. And so that was what we were talking about. And I do like the table that he has about, he calls them compounds, but I'm just like, yes, this is exactly like learning history, MOs, setting events, Those all impact behavior very well.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
some people need to understand that when they talk about their goals, a learner's goals, because that is key.
Mm-hmm.
People often lose sight, or they just don't take it all into consideration. Sorry to interrupt, Diana. You go right ahead.
I was going to say, when I talk about the A, the B, the C, I draw them as circles on the board, but I draw the A circle really huge, and I draw the C circle really small, because there's so many components that affect behavior and the likelihood of behavior occurring, and there's so few things that we actually have control over in the C category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think he does a really good job of laying out like that you can have multiple MOs in place. That is something that I find, student analysts really struggle to always bring to the table without a lot of coaching. That like you need to consider the AOs and the EOs. And, there's a lot going on inside even a 6-year-old that we have to account for if we're going to be supportive and effective.
Yeah. And setting events are inside and outside of the skin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So goals could be your SD. They can help define your reinforcement, but the focus is going to be more in this book all on your systems, which does get us to the definition of atomic habits, which, I think, Jackie, you kind of hinted at the metaphor being, the small things that make up everything else we do. But I'll read the quote. They are a regular practice or routine that is not only small and easy to do, but also the source of incredible power, a component of the system of compound growth, which I'm not sure where he came up with the term. I mean, if he just came up with the term atomic habits because he was, thinking about, well, it's got to be small. Any new change should probably start small.
Probably from the atomic repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think, Jackie?
I do. Yeah, I think there is some parallels there. They mean the same thing. And I think if he didn't, everyone's thinking about these small units that make a larger unit. So I think everyone is pulling from the
it sounds
biology,
cool,
but
also sounds cool.
Or chemistry.
Sounds
very
cool.
dynamic. He seems like a dynamic guy, right? He likes power, phenomenal cosmic power. Mm-hmm. So it's all wrapped up there.
Yeah, and when he talked about Skinner, he actually talked about Skinner incorrectly. I can't remember what page he referenced Skinner, and then the 2 pages he talked about Skinner were not correct. So I did want to pull that out.
Did he talk about negative reinforcement wrong?
No, he doesn't talk. I don't think negative reinforcement's in this book at him.
He talked about it somewhere wrong. Like the history of what he talked about was slightly inconsistent with what actually happened.
Hey, yeah. But he referenced Skinner, so
at least he referenced Skinner.
Well, Jackie, if you didn't like chapter 1, did you really not like chapter 2, or did you like chapter 2? Because chapter 2, I think, talking about kind of an act and kind of selfish contexty values discussion, that's really all this chapter is about, really looking at the idea of identity as a change. And I will admit, as much as I'm not sure if this is probably the least, in some ways, least behavior analytic chapter, I actually found this one to be really interesting in the idea that part of making a change is getting in the habit of sort of identifying your values and then describing them as a context of why you are engaging in the habit. The idea of, because I've always had this trouble. The habit I kind of kept thinking of when I was reading this book was the idea of exercise. And I've had a good exercise routine.
Is that because it's referenced in the book like 100 times?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was like, what's a squat form, bro? And, that's all I could think about as I read this book, because it's all I care about really is exercise. But it has been something that I don't like to do. I don't want to do it. And even when I did it like pretty consistently multiple times a week for over a year, I still thought of myself as like, well, I'm a guy who hates exercise and I have to do this stupid thing because it's dumb.
You got really buff though.
No, yeah, right. I am in much better shape than I was in my 20s. So that's nice.
You are.
Mostly. Thank you.
And you were like throwing your back out a bunch?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not throwing my back out anymore. Yeah. So a lot of that, and I'll get into some of, who gets credit for it. It's not just me. Oh, I got a pat on the back. Thanks, Diane. The small reinforcers that you're looking for in your habit. But really the idea, and I think it's been easier the last year if I've been sick or gotten off my routine and been like, I don't want to do this anymore, that I have to think of my identity not as like, well, I got to be the jackest dude that ever lived and like be super buff for everyone. But the idea of, I like being healthy. I like the idea of living to a nice old age because and be able to be mobile and to do all these enjoyable things. And my personal trainer had said, like, that is so much of this. It is not about like, well, if I don't look like Thor, what was the point of this? Because you're probably not going to look like Thor unless that is your full-time job. If you're a normal human being with non-exercise jobs, you are focusing on your health. And I don't know, this chapter really resonated with me. The idea of my identity doesn't have to be out of sync with a habit I'm trying to form. There's a way I can sort of put them all together in terms of a value. I'd like to do the things I want to do physically as long as I can.
Well, Rob, I was going to find a time to point this out, but ACT is not the only like behavior analytic practice or sort of tool that talks about goals and things like that. A lot of this book and this chapter, I feel I read or even experienced myself in using like behavioral activation ideas about things like that, because that's a big part of it. And behavioral activation, like BATD work, predates ACT. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that you do the values work and you talk about your role and you talk about, in this chapter, he talks about don't make the goal read the book, make the goal become a reader. Mm-hmm. Put yourself in a role, develop a role for yourself in your life. So, and to that extent, I found it familiar, but less common for what people do read. But yeah, that like role-based thinking about who you are and the behaviors that you engage in definitely is less commonly talked about, but like essential to like setting a good goal.
And they talk about like, oh, the human brain makes some thousand number of decisions every day, right? Mm-hmm. You guys have heard that phrase. But if you have these sort of identities set up for yourself, then it's almost like that decision component has been removed there, because it's much clearer what the behavior is that you're going to choose, right? Because that's what fits with your identity. So in that way, it's like removing some of those like day-to-day effortful decisions, because you don't have to make the decision. In that sense, it reminded me a lot of, being in conservative religion from my own personal background.
Please finish this anecdote. I don't know where it's going.
Well, no, just a lot of decision-making is removed because, well, this is what you do. There's no choice component there. And that's, it's part of your identity is that you are a member of this type of church, and those decisions are all made for you.
And those are the happiest people who are 37 times better every single year?
Didn't say that. We're talking about identity, right? Identity-based habits. So,
and why that could be a reinforcing lifestyle, it fits with this book because it decreases your cognitive load. It decreases the strain that you feel day to day if you're not having to make all those decisions. Mm-hmm. If you've automated large parts of your life in ways that make life easier, that's going to be, at least for the short term, very sustainable.
There's a self-reinforcing community, right? Mm-hmm. That perpetuates that culture. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alan always says everything better than I could have.
No. You provide the seed. I just add a little shine on it.
All right. So I think chapter 2 being one that for a lot of folks might not expect that level of foundation in a book about habits. And then finally, before we get in, to make sure we kind of at least gloss over the different sections, what is James Clear 4 simple steps or 4 laws of habit change?
Number 4 may surprise you.
I mean, if you're a behavior analyst, you'll be like, wait a minute, that's not, I usually call them antecedent behavior, consequence, and then maybe, motivating operations.
Well, there's 4 of us here. Can we take turns saying them? Does everybody have them up?
We can do whatever we want with how we say them.
All right, go, Rob.
Well, with any sort of new habit, you need to have a cue that triggers your brain to engage in the behavior and predicts the availability of rewards.
All right.
I've never heard that before. That's really, wow.
And so what does that map onto for us?
I mean, it's your various antecedent manipulations, your SDs. Mm-hmm. It's kind of be, and he kind of lumps all of this together into one sort of bigger, antecedents, like every antecedent that you have in your environment, as well as kind of linking to kind of the idea of the SD of like, there will be a reward. You should do this.
Right, it's the cue. Yeah. And then to pair up with that, the next one is cravings. And so for us, we might call that motivating operations. He's saying you want a change to occur. You crave something that's going to happen in the future, right? And so therefore you're going to work toward that goal. So Q, cravings. Who wants to go next?
I want craisins.
I'll do the
Every time I
next
hear
one.
cravings.
The third law is response. The behaviors that you engage in order to make a habit. So you have to make them easy to start off. So the response effort is easier than what you were currently doing.
All right. Q, cravings. Response?
Reward. Which I think probably a combination of reinforcers, punishers, just the outcomes of that response and how it feeds back into the next set of cues and cravings and set you up for a loop.
Yeah.
So this sounds a lot like the 4-term contingency that we all know and love.
It does.
Because it is the 4-term contingency.
Yeah.
Literally.
With some sprinklings of, behavioral, chaining and shaping in there as well to really
Which we would need.
add to taste.
Yummy little tidbits.
Yeah, which we would need. And really even I've seen weirdly in like some OBM a 5-term contingency where they separate out the concept, like the behavior into the product and the like reinforcer. So like the impact on the environment being slightly separate because the product becomes an SD, could become an SD, even if it is the same and things. So I think that there's maybe some businessy stuff on that that comes out in this and probably some of his coaching. So,
and if you kind of like we talked about are interested in how do I make these more complicated, but important behavioral terms more palatable to the widest swath of audience, well, let's turn these 4 laws into the following phrases: make it obvious, make it attractive.
I was gonna.
We're gonna go around again. So make it obvious,
make it attractive,
make it easy.
Make it satisfying.
And if you do these things, you will improve your behavioral repertoire. But if you don't, well, here's what will happen. If you make it invisible.
Make it unattractive.
Make it difficult.
Or make it unsatisfying, unpalatable.
That's it. Then you won't have new habits. You'll just say, these habits are dumb. I hate them.
So I see that you've written down here Breaking Bad. Is that what Breaking Bad means? In the TV show Breaking Bad?
Breaking bad habits. So if you're trying to break a bad habit like smoking or binge watching, that is how you're going to do it.
No,
I know that. Is that what the title of the show Breaking Bad means?
Breaking Bad refers to the idea of like I don't know if it's originally from pool, but the term of like if you hit a ball and it starts going the wrong way, that ball is breaking bad.
Oh no, so Walter White got on a bad track.
Right.
Spoilers.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. I'm good now.
What happens at the end of Better Call Saul? Do they finally call him? I don't know.
I don't think I finished it.
We did not finish Better Call Saul. Sorry. All right. So the rest of the book is going to go into more detail about these 4 laws. And now that we've gone over what they are, let's spend a little bit of time on each of them and see if there's some additional pieces we want to add to our, more everyone can understand description. We hope you enjoyed this preview of our full-length book club on Atomic Habits. If you can't wait to hear the rest of our conversation where we go in depth into the meat of the book, as well as getting 2 CEs for listening at no additional charge, head on over to patreon.com/ABA Inside Track and sign up at the $10 and up level, the Inside Tracker level. All right, we'll be back with our normal episodes and our normal schedule, but we'll be back with another preview of the upcoming book club, The Anxious Generation, in the spring. I think around April that'll be coming out. We'll be back with that next season. But until then, keep responding all. Bye.